We began the process in 2016 with the support of Scottish Futures Trust, and we gathered together in a series of workshops, partners from the local community planning partnership, local businesses, community representatives and other stakeholders, including our elected members, and used those workshops to do a bit of a SWOT analysis of the Moray economy. And from that analysis, we gained an idea of the kind of outcomes that we wanted to achieve and deliver as a result of the deal, what we wanted Moray to look like at the end of the deal period, so by 2030. And we framed a vision for the deal from that process. And we also identified some cross-cutting themes that had come through in the workshops. And those themes became the 4 platforms of the deal. And we identified, two things that were coming forward really strongly in all our discussions and engagement about, the 2 burning issues that had to be resolved for Moray. And those were the issues around about the gender equality and retaining and attracting young people to the area. And subsequently, we went out and we engaged with the public on what was then the kind of the core of the deal, the heart of the deal, to see if what we thought was the right approach was endorsed in the wider community. And we did that through a variety of engagements. We attended local community events. So, for example, we went to Keith Show and some local food and drink events. We talked to a variety of local groups like the Rotary and some LinkedIn groups. We had a workshop with some local students from Moray College. We did an online survey over a 6-week period, and we got over 1,000 responses to that online survey, which is quite a good return rate for online surveys of that nature. And we got an approval rating for the vision, the platform for the deal, and the key objectives of over 80%. So that told us that we were, the heart of the deal we had right. So the next stage was identifying what projects we would use to deliver that vision and those objectives. Long list of potential ideas. That's really all there were at that stage. That we had over 100 ideas. We then kind of tried to consolidate those and put those into something that held together more strongly and coherently as a project. Which long list, we took that down to a short list of 24. We did some further engagement with Moray Economic Partnership, the UK government, the Scottish government, and so on. And we eventually got that down to the 8 projects that now sit within the deal. So that was the process. It sounds really quick and easy, but getting to that stage took us 2 years. Yeah, I suppose one of the first things I'd want to start with is how do we know that we've got an issue in that area? And I think what I'd say there is we've got a wealth of national and local data that tells us that our views about the gender pay gap and gender equality in Moray is a real pressing issue for us. Nationally, the gender pay gap has continued to narrow at a national level. But in Moray, the gap has now widened beyond the level it was at in 2019. And a big factor in that is the predominance of women in low-paid part-time work. And in Moray, a lot of that is tied up with our key sectors in the area, including tourism and food and drink. Those sectors rely heavily on seasonal and part-time workers, and those sectors have been particularly heavily impacted by recent events, including the pandemic. Locally, we have a wealth of data as well. So Glasgow School of Art, in collaboration with HI, did a piece of research in 2019 about work and life inequalities and social inclusion in the Moray area, and they arrived at some findings as a result of that. They found that Moray showed a strong presence of resilient entrepreneurial micro businesses among women, but the workshop and the research also showed a really strong need for flexible childcare to allow women's interest in business to continue to flourish and grow, and also the need to encourage local businesses to roll out and expand their family-friendly working policies. We also know from studies done by the Federation of Small Businesses that Moray is a bit of a hotspot for female entrepreneurial activity, with more than 1 in 10 of working age females in Moray being self-employed, and that's a higher share than any other mainland authority in Scotland. Another issue that we are aware of is that often the pathways that women follow into their careers are set at quite an early age, and we have been looking with interest at some of the choices that young women and young men are making when they are in their senior year 3 in secondary school and choosing their future career pathway. And we have sector days in terms of the Moray Pathways process, which is intended to help young people in selecting future careers. And even as recently as 2019, when we last ran those large-scale events for our young people, we found there was still a real preponderance of young men interested in areas like construction and design, with young women very heavily favouring sectors like the care sector. So it's clear that we have a lot of work to do locally. And in supporting projects in the key sectors of health and aerospace, as well as early years education, we will hopefully be able to make inroads into that issue locally and expand our STEM, that's science, technology, engineering and math skill base. And that will help us to empower girls and young women and indeed women with families in the local area. Each of our projects have to demonstrate how they will tackle inequalities, including gender-based inequalities, and how they'll support women's entrepreneurship and encourage women into STEM careers. And we also have projects that look at tackling some of the constraints around women and the workplace. So the Bus Revolution project should help with some of the issues around about travel into work for women, particularly women living in rural areas. We have other projects that should support that. For example, the Business Enterprise Hub will support 450 Moray-based small and medium-sized enterprises to scale up and grow, and we are hoping that women will use that as a resource to help them achieve their aspirations in this particular area. Moving forward in 2022, engagement will continue so that our residents can better understand the projects and they can help to shape and influence them as the business cases are developed and we move towards implementation of projects. This year that's likely to begin with the Bus Revolution project, which is the project to improve rural transport. And we will begin by issuing some explanatory information about how we're looking to increase our low carbon fleet of vehicles to make transport more accessible, particularly, as I said, in the rural parts of Moray. And we will be engaging with our local communities and relevant groups, including car sharing transport groups across the area. Another project where we'll be undertaking early engagement is for our digital health project, and our partners at the Digital Health Institute will begin working with communities on co-designing person-centred healthcare using the latest technologies to empower local people to better track, manage, monitor and improve their health through what are called living labs. Now that is where local residents go about their ordinary lives using tech and testing out in a real life environment, and that information is then fed back to the Digital Health Institute, and then they use that to interact with commercial partners and help to bring new products to the marketplace. We'll also be continuing with the engagement with students, including students from Moray College and the University of Highlands and Islands, on our Moray Aerospace and Advanced Technology Innovation Campus, which will be based at Lossiemouth. We will be looking to involve school pupils in redesign work at Cooper Park, and we'll also be showcasing procurement opportunities for local suppliers to facilitate the community wealth building aspects already embedded in the 8 projects across the deal. Local authorities of the scale of Moray do not leverage in funding at the scale of 100 million and more on any more than a kind of once in a generation basis. And it's a unique opportunity also because we've had an opportunity to craft the way that money will be spent in Moray from the very outset, and we will be working hand in hand with our local businesses and local communities to make sure that the 8 projects will be delivered in a way that allows us to maximise our opportunities, improve life for our residents, and generally to ensure that Moray is a place on the map that people recognise and admire and want to come to visit and hopefully also live and work in.